everybody. Welcome to our podcast today and happy St. Patrick's Day. There's a reason why I'm wearing bright green today, and my guest Ben is the same. I'm in the Markov ML studio for our listeners. Markov is a provider of AI agent platform for modern marketing teams, and we're all about getting work done efficiently, giving you time back in your day to focus on high value work. So I do encourage you to check out markovml.com. The name of our podcast for our avid listeners out there, you know this, it's all about what's data and AI got to do with it. So for anyone who relies on data and information every day, where you need better insights to make decisions and take action, this podcast is for you. Let's be honest, we've no shortage of data and info. It's spread out and it does make it harder to get clean, clear answers. Scattered and stranded. I like to use the word stranded now. Sometimes it's trapped inside an app and a system. Hopefully, you all have reports and dashboards that you're relying on. But the real question is, what are you doing with that data and information? Are you learning from it? And importantly, how are you using it to move the needle and drive revenue and growth? Podcast guests, we are practicing marketers and GTM pros. The goal is to inform, give you practical advice, and we're going to focus on the real authentic stories, the challenges that we all face. We'll celebrate wins, no judgment, only learning. So let's dive in. Our guest today is Ben Childs, and let's get started. Ben, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and how you got into the world of digital marketing.
Absolutely. My name is Ben Childs. I'm the co-founder of Digital Reach. We're a pipeline generation agency working with B2B SaaS and tech companies across brand, digital experience, RevOps, and pipeline generation. I got into it by accident. I graduated from college in 2009 with an English degree. It was a pretty bad year to graduate with a pretty bad degree to graduate with. Um, I actually traveled to LA after college to write comedy, do improv, and just explore that scene. And my day job just happened to be doing sales for a small paid media agency in the Valley across the hill. And I did not like LA. It was a lot of culture shock for me. I did not like that agency. So moved up to San Francisco with some friends and started Digital Reach in 2011. If I was going to call for someone, I may as well call for myself and do sales for, what I sell. And we've grown from working with kind of ultra small businesses to getting into the SaaS and tech scene in probably 2014, 2015, and then have built more and more things on top of kind of our original services, which kind of leads to this call because I think over the last couple of years, we've really been on a kick that everything is connected and data systems are really kind of like the most valuable thing that customers have, but don't really invest in or take seriously. And if we're going to do any service for someone, whether it's paid media, even creative or rebuild their website, um, hoping it leads to more pipeline, which is what everybody wants, is great. But doing a deep dive, we call it a roadmap, where we actually explore how all these systems are connected and what the benefit of doing anything and the effect on everything else is has kind of been where we've landed. And that's been really positive for us.
Nice. Congratulations on 14 years in business. Well done, you. It's no
Thank
easy
you.
task to start an agency, and especially in the world of marketing, which has undergone a huge amount of change. I just full disclosure, I worked with Ben some years ago. We were actually going through our history of emails. It's
Yeah.
been a while, but Ben and his team do great work. So check them out on all things digitalreachagency.com. What's your URL? I know
Yep.
they can find you.
digitalreachagency.com.
Yeah, great. Okay, so I have some questions. Let's get into it. So you serve customers of all types, typically B2B, and tell me, why is having clear data insights critical to the business of your customers?
So I think there's two tangible business reasons when it comes to marketing. Obviously, there's, hundreds. But if you want to do anything, you need good data. But one is just forward-looking investments. So in B2B, it's easy to spend money everywhere. And back in the old days, I think people did that. They felt like they needed, an SEO company for their SEO channel. They needed a Google company for their Google channel, and they needed, all these things that were in these own individual channels. But as things have become kind of more omni-channel, interconnected, buying committees, customer journeys, um, understanding what drives revenue across the sales cycle, um, being able to double down on what's working instead of feeling like you need to do everything, um, I think is really key. And the other one is attribution and efficiency. So on the flip side, clear data allows you to defend your budget, allows you to defend your work, it allows you to defend your results. You can confidently show what worked, what didn't, where to optimize, rather than on gut feelings or just kind of vibes. Um, Obviously, the we're going to talk. One of my, I think, things in this conversation is just how political data is at a lot of organizations. And so, having data is one thing, being able to sell that data is another. And I mean sell internally.
Yep.
Because the two organizational reasons outside of the business reasons why data is important is the first one is collaboration and alignment. So when data is clear, agreed upon, shared across teams, everything just operates more smoothly and it prevents finger pointing and everyone knows where they're going. So this is a big thing that we come across is the data for us is much simpler a lot of the times than the actual like political atmosphere we're getting into at companies around the data. Um, and then the other one, which I know is a big topic for you, is automation and AI readiness. So probably one of the best business speeches I saw in recent years was a gentleman from Forrester walked through, it was at a Sales Loft user conference, just talking about if you make these upfront investments in your data, kind of like where AI and automation is going and the acceleration you will see in pulling away from your competition if you do this. And it's marginal now, and people are obviously seeing it and utilizing it. But my business partner gave a webinar recently where he mentioned that I think a lot of people treat AI kind of like if they were like Blockbuster and Netflix came in looking to get bought. There's a famous story, and Blockbuster just couldn't understand how they would even like worry about this company. Netflix embraced, streaming, embraced technology, and then, you know, slowly, then all at once,
The
Blockbuster
rest
was
is
out of
history.
business.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so, he had a line in a webinar like, don't become a Blockbuster, be a Netflix.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think data is just so important, and data architecture and data systems in making sure that you have the groundwork where you don't have to rip it up later.
Yeah. So true. I think that one of the hardest parts for modern marketers is striking the balance on like creatively coming up with interesting campaigns to engage your audiences and being
Mhm,
laser focused. And then I call it the 1-2 punch, right? And then you have to do that, but you also have to measure all at the same time.
mhm.
So you're constantly tuning and learning because the data informs that. And if these two worlds are not brought together and integrated, and you're talking about it in a data and creative fashion, then you're kind of driving blind, right?
Yeah, and that's kind of one of the paradoxes of modern marketing is you need the creative aspect, you need good taste, you need to be able to go with your gut and intuition. You need
Yep.
to come out of a customer call and know if what they said was real or not. But you also need kind of the other side of your brain where you're taking a very cold look at what worked and are able to kill your darlings, as they say.
Yep.
You can't be too precious about a
Right.
campaign or a direction that you staked some reputation on that might be a good idea.
Yep.
Um, you have to be able to look at it from both ways.
Yep. The data won't lie, right? I mean, assuming that you are actually collecting it and then putting it in a format that you can intelligently review and assess and make decisions from. Like that is a whole other set of challenges. Like, can you actually understand the data? My son is a student in college now and he's studying data science.
Mhm.
And I highly encouraged him to do this degree because it is all about the data, let's be honest. It's been like that for many, many years. And one of the hardest parts of data science is actually not, making sure all your fields are in there and that your data is somewhat hygienic, but it's
Mhm.
actually being able to deduce business insights from charts and tables. That muscle is something that like you can it's hard to learn, right?
Yeah.
I've seen it in meetings myself where somebody brings a bunch of charts and visuals, and then people are sitting there going, how do I read this? I'm not, somebody explain it to me. And sometimes people are afraid to ask how to read a chart, but it
Yeah.
is a muscle that you need.
And it's a much firmer ground to stand on than everyone in the room pointing that sales isn't following up on leads and sales pointing to marketing saying we're not getting enough leads. Having the actual data allows you to have a more pointed conversation around how to fix the problem
Right.
and get everyone, singing from the same hymn book, as opposed to we missed our quarter. Um,
It's your fault.
I'm mad at
You
everybody
Yeah,
but me.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah. All right. So when you work with your clients, why is it hard to surface the right set of data and information?
Yeah, so I recently had a conversation with our senior marketing automation strategist, Colton, who's hilarious. And he said that data is the scary monster hiding under the bed. Everyone just wants to jump into bed rather than dealing with it.
Yeah.
Um, and the upfront cost, both in time, but also internal resources and mind share, is a really difficult thing for people to get over because, especially in 2025, in this kind of capital constrained, efficient environment, everyone wants leads, 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 pipeline, pipeline, pipeline.
Hmm.
And, you know, you kind of need to slow down to speed up to do that, which is just antithetical to what what a lot of decision makers want to hear.
Yep.
They want to hear how they can scale their paid ads or increase their speed to lead or, something like that when, their data is not conducive to doing that, shall we say.
Right.
And that was a big revelation for us is we can jump in with the best of intentions in a campaign. But if we don't actually connect the dots to and take the time to really understand how a customer's brand data and pipeline generation activities and business intelligence all fit in with one another, um, you can go very fast in the wrong direction. um, and it's
Yep.
funny, at that speech at Forcer, which was so good, my business partner, who's very great at this, he was the first hand up. And he said, okay, Forcer guy, that's a really great speech. How do you get people to pay for this?
Hmm.
And he kind of like slumped and was like, yeah, that's a real problem because everyone just wants more SDRs, more calls, more ads, more landing pages, more form fills.
Yep.
So the first is definitely the upfront cost. And I know you've spoken about that before. You need to dedicate a little bit of time as you go to be doing the process work, to be doing the actual maintenance work,
Yep.
and think about stuff before you dive in.
Right.
Another issue that we deal with in terms of surfacing the right data information is definitely going to be that internal alignment and politics issue is how you set up your data systems and structure is really how you set up your business.
Hmm.
Um, all these conversations and this point and the next topic are very interconnected. All these conversations really affect everything, both from different people on the team, but to also like the direction of the business and their entire go to market. And so, um, there's rarely a coherent idea that gets out of a single silo at a company that we work with. And so, bringing everyone together and getting them all on the same page, some relationship therapy, is a lot of what we do.
Yep.
Um, and then the other one why it's difficult is because this all seems easy to, I think, people who aren't living in HubSpot or Salesforce or something like that. So any idea you have for improvement or any quick report you need or any, any just quick ask. We're very good at saying like, okay, this depends because this also affects this, this, and this. And have you talked to this person and gotten their sign off? And so it becomes easier to just try and jump into bed and start trying to get leads than actually like do the hard work that is not going to be revenue producing by Friday
Yeah.
on actually fixing the systems.
Yeah. Yeah. And playing catch up later on, if you don't like spend the time to build the foundation of the data and the systems, then it's really hard to catch up, right? It's sort of like, you know, the beginning of every year, we're all good about our resolutions and we want to lose X pounds, go to the gym or get our six pack or whatever we're looking for, right? And then, life gets in the way, we get busy, and then you don't do it. Well, guess what? It's really hard to get, unless you get that muscle going early on. I've always encouraged, over the years, working at startups with a, small-ish marketing team. One of the first critical hires is actually the marketing operations person.
Definitely.
And I like pretty much almost before the demand gen person, right?
Mhm.
Or the, growth. So if the ops person like knows the inside of that engine and the fields and the systems and the process, then they can grow and elevate and become the demand gen or growth human. But it's very hard to go the other direction, right?
Yeah, and as a services company that's a vendor, we have to deal with where people are at. And
Yeah,
so we talked with someone around potentially doing some HubSpot work, and the decision makers were two salespeople. Because it was a small company and they had like a marketing consultant that brought us in.
yep,
And we were like, wait, 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 wait. Before we fix this and fix this, which will allow you to, you know, get your calls out faster or, sync with your Salesforce faster. Like we have to do a lot of other stuff to make sure that like these don't get lost and are getting followed up on and really have the infrastructure to go into. And, it didn't work out in terms of an engagement because that wasn't the context that they were living in with the amount of budget they had, their
sure.
expertise and things like that. So that's something we have to be sensitive to is we can tell people best practices. We can tell people the downside of not building the infrastructure.
Yep.
If they're like, look, we just don't even have the time or resources,
Yeah. Then
I can't.
you know what you're compromising on. You at least have to be very aware.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. As long as we're upfront on what we're compromising on,
Yep.
it's all going to blow up later. But let's plant the flag, shake hands, and say, all right, we're going to dive in.
Yep. Exactly. All right. Before we move to our AI stuff, one more question on this. What do you think are the most critical building blocks to get in place in order to fully understand what's working on the marketing investments? So we sort of touched on it, but I know you have some very pointy answer here. So let's shed light on that.
Yeah, there's three things. The and that none of them are necessarily easy, but the first one is pretty simple, which is clear OKRs and strategic goals that we can actually get insights and track. Um, so much around the conversation around data or AI is what do you want? What do you want to do? What do you want to measure? And just getting that aligned around what actually moves the needle for them will get them to their goals is like a great first step because a lot kind of falls into place and that dictates a lot of things downstream. The second one's much more complex, but it's ensuring that we have the necessary architecture and access to the data to measure progress against those goals. So it's data access, getting data from disparate sources, centralized in one location, correct tech stack, some type of data cleansing and transformation, going and cleaning out blank records, duplicates. Ideally, you have, not terribly reliant on manual input, but you might need to roll up your sleeves and dedupe some records. Um, and a visualization tool, choosing the right visualization tool to get insights into that. And then the third is just going to be, charting a report, building a report that gives progress along those OKRs and strategic goals. So it's like a pretty simple one, two, three. But I think the first one is really key and that it dictates a lot of the second. And then if you don't have the third, which is the right visualization, dashboarding, or reporting, um, that everyone is looking at and everyone gets access to. So there's no, questions or concerns. There's no there's always going to be finger pointing, but uh, there's
Yes,
um,
hopefully.
there's
Yeah.
less finger pointing and more generative conversations. Um,
I like that.
that's really kind of what you need in place.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay. We're getting to, I want to give us time to talk about AI. We'll come back at the end if there's any scary stories we want to share. So, are you using AI tech today to help you execute and hopefully drive some efficiency? So I'm assuming that you're using ChatGPT or some LLM in a capacity. So why don't you share what your experiences are?
Yeah, we are heavy ChatGPT users. I mentioned a challenge I gave myself last April, so almost a year ago, that for the month of April, I would not do anything without starting in ChatGPT. I would not write a follow-up email. I would not write a Slack. I would not um, write a note to my wife or, any issue I was facing, I would throw it in. And it really gave me a lot of insight into kind of like what it can be used and not used for and some of the best use cases. But because we're a services company, I highly recommend that everyone on our team use some type of AI to just check their emails before they send. Um, it may not mean it goes faster, actually, but you really have kind of a more commitment to quality and not screwing that up. Um, and then I think one of the things that we've definitely used it for is we just use a variety of AI tools that a lot of people know for call recordings, clipping up videos. Um, those aren't panaceas. They don't do everything for you. You still have to check the follow-up email. Um, I like to say with most AI tools, um, they are I'm going to mispronounce it. Is it sous vide or sous vide?
I
Are
don't
you
know.
familiar with the type of cooking? Are you familiar with the type of
Oh,
cooking where you?
no, clearly not. Clearly
Okay,
not.
my wife loves to cook. I'm going to call it sous vide, and someone can correct me. But my
Yeah.
wife likes to sous vide, and she likes to make steak. And what she does is she gets a pot of water, puts the sous vide in, which brings it up to a certain temperature, puts the steak in plastic, puts it in, and then it cooks it evenly over the course of a couple hours. And
Mm,
then to make it really good, though, what you do is you sear it on a pan. So really any AI tool we use, and I know you've mentioned like what do you call it, like a human capital, or you need human intelligence.
yeah.
Pretty much any AI tool we use can get us, a certain part of the way there, but they really need to be seared by a human to really get it presentable. Um, so regardless of the tool, I find that, I'm going to use some human interaction anyway.
Yeah. I am not the meat person in our house. My husband actually is good on the grill, and I leave all that up to him. I'm the dessert and the starter person,
Yeah.
so yeah. But I will ask him. I learned something today. And that's a really good analogy or metaphor. Um, if you don't have a human in the loop, I mean, like, yeah, it could be a little scary. And I've heard some scary stories about like people just taking whatever the AI tool produced and off you go. You actually need to review it for lots of reasons, right? You need accuracy, you need tone, you need to inject your own personality. Leaving it all up to the machine is probably not the best thing. And back to our earlier point, which is marketing is about that art, the creative element. And that's why we do our jobs, I think, which is we love the creative challenge. And then, oh yes, reading the science that tells us what's working. I think that's the beauty of doing marketing.
Yeah, you need to know where you're going.
Yeah.
Um, and you need to be good enough to know when you've gotten there. And I think that's really key is, a lot of this stuff can really get you pretty far, but if, expertise still matter, taste still matters, intuition still matters, experience still matters. I can use AI to write a follow-up email, but if I don't know what a good follow-up email looks like, I can probably send some pretty junky stuff.
Right.
Um,
Yep.
so yeah, knowing where you're going and expertise
Yep.
still matters and will matter even more because those people will get empowered to leverage themselves at a significantly higher scale and pace,
Yep.
um, and be able to do the work of a lot of people.
Yeah. I love that. Um, the way I think about AI is like your ChatGPT example, which are basically LLMs and hopefully you have good prompts, right? It's all about the prompt. So that that you can get like much, a big lift, take the grindy manual effort out of it. Great. Now I have a great starting point, and then you
Hmm.
put that human in the loop. But I think where AI and AI agents are going is they're context aware. It's not just about a prompt, but they have context based on like maybe the set of data that they're analyzing or summarizing or reviewing, and then taking the next natural set of steps or workflow things that will move it further along, as opposed to just a transaction in and out, ask a question, get an answer. That's great, but like where the market is heading is a little bit more sophisticated than that. It doesn't mean you take the human out of the loop, but you are relying on it to do more manual, repetitive tasks than you would otherwise do that would be like laborious and time consuming.
Yeah, and I think the context is really important, but that's data architecture, that's intention. There's some upfront work and expertise there. It's interesting you were mentioned the context. The CEO of Box, Aaron Levy, actually had a tweet recently where he just mentioned the benefits of from a very early stage of Box just adopting kind of an not like an AI forward, you could call it that, but like an AI inevitable approach to where their AI tools just have access to everything in the company.
Yep.
And, the more you're able to give it access to, the more it's able to kind of build context for itself, and really do some, pretty incredible things.
Yeah. All right. So we're coming towards the end. So I have one question still related on this topic of AI. Do you believe marketing teams can benefit from AI adoption more broadly?
Yeah, I think the answer is, without a doubt, definitely. I think there has to be a couple things in place, which is, um, again, expertise is still really going to matter. And also, process is going to matter. And so those two things are definitely related, expertise and the ability to know how to get from one place to the other. Um, but if you have your process, then you can select the right AI tools that are right for that portion of the process. Um, I think we're pretty far away from AI being your CMO or AI automagically optimizing everything in your marketing ever on an ongoing basis, always. But if you have a pretty good idea of what you want and the way to get there, that's when AI can become really powerful when you have that use case, um, and can let it rip in, that specific context.
Yep. Do you think teams, marketers need to get more comfortable, or do you think there's a skill gap, or like, you know, I find it very exciting right now because we're on the cusp of this being able to take advantage of some great technology. Um, how do you think the fear and the skill gap enter
Yeah,
this?
I think it's I know you've talked about this before. It's easy as a marketer to complain about people's short-term focus.
Mhm.
Um, but you really need to dedicate a certain amount of time and space and vulnerability to exploring the tools.
Yep.
Um, I've looked at a lot of specific tools, spot tools for use cases, and a lot of times I just go down a rabbit hole and waste half a day playing around with something cool.
Mhm.
But that, at the end of the day, is kind of how you learn these things. Um, and so I think developing like a kind of cultural approach of like things that we can use AI for, let's try it, but then having the actual time and vulnerable space to let people try those things, I think is something different because, you know, everyone has a board meeting coming up and their quarterly goals and kids and
Mhm.
everything else.
I
And so
Yeah.
it's like you need to give yourself this like meditation space where there's no judgments and you just get to play around.
Yep.
Um, and that's tough in corporate America right now.
Yep. Yeah. Agreed. All right. So we're rounding out. I'll let you decide if you want to share any scary data story or you have any parting words of wisdom for our listeners today. Uh,
Yeah, I think the parting words would be you either deal with it now or deal with it later. And that's kind of a tough sell to people who need to make their quarter. But the longer you let bad data kind of accrue, the more painful it's going to be later, especially if things work and you're scaling. That's when things really become messy when you have to untangle it later to get to the next level.
yep.
And we've worked with several companies like that where they got to, 10 million ARR, realized they needed to, now split up into multiple sales teams and multiple sections of the market and begin marketing to different regions individually. And that's when it's like, oh, like this is a real mess that, is now going to take a lot of work to solve.
Yep.
And like I mentioned, context matters. Maybe they didn't have the opportunity or budget or resources to be able to make that change at the beginning. But if you really build your marketing team with an eye towards clean, good data and an AI first approach, um, you'll just you're just going to start lapping other companies and get there faster. So, in my opinion, it's easy for me to say as a marketer, but invest in it now so you don't have to take the pain later.
Yep. Well said. All right. Well, thank you for joining us today, Ben. I've really enjoyed the conversation. I definitely learned some stuff. Hopefully, our audience did too. And everyone out there, happy St. Patrick's Day. I know it's probably not going to be Patrick's Day that you're listening to this, but uh, even next year, I think some of our conversation will ring true and stand the test of time. So enjoy your day, folks, and thank you again, Ben.
Thanks, Deirdre.